Hello, and welcome to another episode of Generally Speaking. Today's Saturday, November 15th, 2025. What am I starting off with? A fellow named Kudi Nadine, or at least that's what the site was. It was hosted by Yanis Varoufakis. Anyway, he was talking about Russian naval ships going to Venezuela and how this is a change in world affairs in that the Western Hemisphere has always been United States playground, and we own it all, and no one can say what happens here except us. But now we have the Russians going to help the Venezuelans, who we are attacking for no reason whatsoever. Suggestions are, of course, has something to do with the oil fields, which are now everybody saying the biggest reserves on the planet. So yeah, we want those oil reserves, and I'm just thinking, okay, great, we need a lot of oil reserves, but we really need to be focusing more on, green energy, some more of that solar, wind, alternative battery sources, all sorts of alternative sources. There are so many things. If you put some effort into it, you come up with things you never thought would be there. What else we got? This is from the Young Turks that APAC is cracking. The lobbying group that wants everyone to cheer and support Israel. It's starting to have defectors. In fact, three Democratic representatives have said they'll no longer take APAC cash. So this is a good thing because why should we be supporting Israel. For what reason? Okay, you think it's a democratic state, except it's not. There are, if you're a Palestinian, if you're not, even if you're Christian, we're all yay Christians. You don't have the same rights as Jewish people. So it's APAC is cracking, and that's a good thing. Only took 2 years of horrible genocide to bring it about. The Netherlands in Europe, they had recently taken over a Chinese company, taking it over. That's what they do in Latin America, take over countries, nationalize them, right? And they took it over because why? Because the United States told them to, because they didn't like what it was a Chinese company, and they want to put the screws to China. So they made up some kind of an excuse that it's threatening the security of chip supplies to the EU. These chips that they make are control chips for vehicles, and all this initiated by the United States, but they just screwed themselves as they always do, because these chips were necessary for so many automobiles, like Volkswagen is primarily mentioned. So China said, you know what, fine, okay, we're not going to send the parts to this company. It's called Nixperia that makes those parts, and now you can't make them. Well, it only took like a week or two, and then the old was, you know what? Hey, wait a minute. Maybe we didn't mean what we were saying. You know what, Netherlands, give back control to Nixperia. Okay, so two points here: the bully United States and the foolishness of the United States bully. All right, what do we got in Tennessee? They are expediting the certification process to get a GOP candidate uh, counter to Adelita, because Adelita will be the 218th vote to ask for a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. Now, this is a little bit old. Adelita has recently already been put in. She'd already put in her 2 cents. But you know how processes are slow. So we still have to wait for the Epstein files to be released, the discharge petition to take effect. And even if it does, who knows if the Department of Justice will release them anyway? They just do whatever they want. So what else? We got Jamie Raskin demanding to know why the DOJ closed the Epstein investigation. He's demanding to know. He's demanding. Supreme Courts tell the Department of Justice, do this, do that, and they don't anyway. Anybody think Raskin's going to have any more influence or have an impact? I'm glad he's saying something about it. Don't know what good it's going to do. So now we got something else. The news. I'm reading the news. I'm talking back to you the news, and they're talking about polls. Now they're starting to quote online betting platforms. All bets are on this person. All bets are on this person. All bets are on the Supreme Court will do so and so. All bets are on the three of there. We're quoting betting platforms. All right, so we got this another person, Anastasi in Tech. That's the name of the site. I guess the lady's name is Anastasi, and she was talking about a factory being built here, proposed to be built here by Samsung, $50 billion worth of factory, and how it looks like it's going to be a complete flop. That it's not going to come about. $50 billion oopsie, $50 billion oopsie. But one of the things I thought was interesting to think about when they were building this were concerns, like is it near a population with people that work, that have skills and things like that. But one of them was, is it in a geologically stable area? Because you don't want any earthquakes in this place. Because when you're working on chips that have like tiny, 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 tiny parameters, you can't afford a little shake or wiggle. In fact, they don't just look for the ground being stable. They put in all kinds of technology, pylons into the ground 100 feet deep, made with all kinds of rubbers and reinforcements and everything, so that this factory will not shake, even if a truck just goes rolling by, because that'll happen. Truck rolling by, you and I wouldn't notice it, but it'll be the tiniest little shake, and there goes, $1 million worth of chips. Throw out that batch. Here's another site, Novara Media. These are the guys in Britain. They were just making a story about the Indian state, that's in India, the state of Kerala, that it has eliminated poverty. India, it kind of boggles me a little bit. It's such a huge country. You think something like going strong, a biggie, but it's not really. It's economically on the weak side, and I just wonder, how can such a big country, be weak like that? Even Russia is the same way. This giant, super military power, it doesn't have all this economic development. They're not doing something right. China did things right. I don't know. Maybe there are things besides the way China did things that contributed to its economic success. But at any rate, in India, you have a lot of poor regions. You have regions that don't get electricity for lots of parts of the day. No air conditioning. They have water shortage issues. And at any rate, this one state, the state of Kerala, had its eliminated poverty, so everyone is now out of poverty. I'm not saying they're all rich or anything, but they're not in poverty. And okay, what about that? Well, okay, great for that. But it's run by communists. Communists are doing it. Can you believe that? So, wow, the bad communists. Which brings the point about just the word communism. What do people mean by it? And different people mean different things. Is this policy communist? Is that policy communist? Just because a person says we're a communist country doesn't mean they are communists. I mean, what, you'd have to read all the works by Karl Marx and Lenin and all the other communist people like Castro and the Chinese person to figure out, well, what is a communist? And you know what, if you do one thing that someone thinks that's communist, well, then now you're communist. It's like calling people a Christian when they don't even go to church. They just say they're Christian. Are they really Christian? I mean, I've spoken to a friend of mine who says, this is not a Christian country, which you got to be kidding me. There's a church on every corner, especially where I live. Maybe I'm in a bad neighborhood. They got churches everywhere. Every member of Congress is Christian, except for one or two outliers. Yeah, we're a Christian country, but she'll say no, we're not. They're say they're Christians, but they're not. Half the denominations out there, because it's not her denomination, aren't Christian, so it's not a Christian plate. And so, yeah, this place is called a communist, but in what sense is it communist? I don't know. But the bottom line is, they eliminated poverty. I go on so long about something sometimes. Okay, it's ICE with their warrantless abductions. They're still taking people off the street, and it's still illegal. You can't just take people, just round up. I don't like you. Come here. I'm going to check you out. And they've taken so many American citizens, born American citizens, not green card, not became an American citizen, born here American citizen, and they'll take them and they'll lock them up. How would you like to go to a detention center with locked up with 80 people in a cell and hope you don't have a medical condition, because they're not going to give you any help? You could die there. In fact, one person, family went looking for him. Where did he go? Where did he go? It ended up in a hospital, is where they found him, totally paralyzed. All he could do was blink his eyes, and he was on the verge of death. These detention centers, years. How do these go up? Just goes to show how things can happen in a bureaucracy in a large organization, and nobody can do anything about it. What, you got to take them to court? You got to go through this whole long process. Meanwhile, they've already killed how many people? And so still with their warrantless abductions. All right, another story I was reading about. I just got tired of politics and I was watching something now. People who go hiking when they shouldn't go hiking. Young girl decided to go to a mountain range in New England, and these mountains aren't very tall. Actually, you could just kind of walk up them. There's no real climbing issues, but the real issue is the weather. The weather up there can go like 20 below in the winter, which is when she went going, and the winds can be over 200 miles an hour. Whoever thought there was places like this where the winds go 200 miles an hour and you get 20 below. And this girl, she thought, well, I'm going to hike this, and then I'm going to hike that one and that one. I'm going to start in the morning. I should be done, by the evening, hiking all these. I'm going to huff it. I'm going to go fast. And because I'm going fast, I'm not going to bring a tent. I'm not going to bring some of these extra things that a person might want to have in, bad conditions. Well, yeah, she died. So, Mount Washington, winds up to 230 miles per hour have been recorded up there. Okay, Texas. Texas is now allowing judges to refuse certification of gay marriage. They're saying, it's against their religion. They don't have to do it. And this brings up a point I've made before: is why does religious preferences, feelings, sentiments get any kind of play? What's difference about that and anybody's strongly held position about anything, religious or not? I don't like people who are right-handed. I don't like anyone who deals with me at 2 in the afternoon. I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. All right, what's this? Vote for Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota. I'm trying to mention some names. I've left messages with other sites that I watch telling me about this progressive and that, what we have to do. I said, can you please mention some people worth voting for? So we got Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota and Abdul El Sayed in Michigan. And let's not forget Graham Plantner in Maine. Graham, well, this guy, he's getting so much, up and down and up and down. He was touted, this is a great guy, says all the right things. And then people started digging up his history where he was saying the not good things, where he was not doing the good things. He was working for BlackRock, a company that has mercenaries, that has an infamous incident of just killing crowds of people in Iraq, Iran, one of those countries in the Mideast. Just killed them, just decided to blow up the town. And so he was involved with that group. I'm not saying he was in that incident, but he was working for BlackRock as a mercenary. Why do you even go? Why does anybody want to go somewhere where they can shoot people? And he had a tattoo, a Nazi tattoo, but he says, I didn't know it was a Nazi. I was just, in the military. We all get skull tattoos, which, they do. Guys love skulls. I always think about, why do you want a skull? A skull is someone who died. Doesn't even have any flesh or skin anymore. You want the dead guy. For some reason they want the dead guy. All right. So Tucker Carlson, he's been getting in the news because he was so much of a right wing person, but he started saying left wing things like "get out of Israel." Our support of Israel is bad, and you almost start thinking, hey, maybe this guy has something worth hanging a hat on, worth buddying up to. And then I see this interview in which he's talking about he was asleep one night and thought he heard a noise, didn't know what it was. Suddenly he couldn't breathe. Something was like pressing on his chest, and he felt these pains on his side. He got out of bed and he had claw marks on his chest. He had been clawed by demons. Demons had clawed him at night. Yeah, all right. So Looney Tunes, let's keep our associations with you a little bit more of a distance. All right, the continuing resolution, which was recently passed because the Democrats caved and let them have it. The Republicans snuck in a little provision into this clean continuing resolution that senators can sue for the minimum, this is the bottom, they can sue for more of $500,000 because Jack Smith was investigating them for the January 6th insurrection that happened. He was getting phone records of who they called on a certain day to find out who Trump was communicating with. And they weren't like conversations, getting the whole conversations, just who was called at what times. And they got all in a tizzy, the Republicans, about how dare you record us? You can't do that, not under any conditions, any way, shape, form, anyhow. I can record you though, Democrats. Yeah, oh, you got to be recorded up and down and arrested and thrown away, but not us. And in fact, because of you did that, I can take you to court for $500,000. Now, I don't know where this will go because everything he did was perfectly legal. So I don't think they're going to get any $500,000 or more. But the thing is, they're putting it in there, and since they control all the Department of Justice and everything, maybe they could get it, even if it was totally unwarranted. I'm hoping not, because judges have to get involved. And one thing I have to say, judges are still being a stumbling block for the administration. Not all the judges; some of them are enabling him, especially the Supreme Court. But at the lower levels, at the appellate courts, the trial courts, he's running into issues. So hopefully they won't get any money for that. What about just give away money? The bill, the continuing resolution that the Democrats caved on. What was one of the things they said? Listen, if you agree to talk to us about extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies, okay, we'll go along with this. So agree to go along to have discussions about it later. Sure, we'll have discussions later. Just don't expect us to come to the decisions you would like, that we should extend them. No, but we'll discuss it. And in fact, who's we? We's the Senate. The House of Representatives, on the other hand, Mike Johnson said, no, 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 no. We won't discuss it at all. So this was really quite the loss for the Democrats. And there's a big ruckus within the Democratic Party about what Chuck Schumer did. He should be kicked out. And really, so many other Democrats need to be kicked out. I saw a little story. Someone was saying this idea that the Democrats actually rotate, who's going to be a bad guy in the party, and that we can blame everything on them when we don't get our way. And actually, that's just what we want, is to, not rock the boat, just have centrist, corporate approved policies. And we routinely, pick a different person. You're going to be the bad guy. And that's how we work. Maybe that's how it is. But hopefully, we'll get some more progressives in. We got Zoran Mamdani, who's not in Congress, but I mean, he's that kind of a person. And we've got people running now that are progressives. There's Kate Baguzela. I have a hard time with her name, especially it's not in front of me. But also Graham Plattner looks good, assuming he's not really a Nazi and not really a counter intel plant, and other people. So, which I mentioned a couple of names before. Who's this? Another person now. Cade Cothran. This man had a pardon. Trump is pardoning everybody, and Cade, interesting name, Cade Cothran. He was pardoned. This guy was guilty of more crimes than you could shake a stick at. He was worse than what Trump did. And I can't remember all the crimes now, but there we go. Another horrible person being pardoned. Nigeria. This was interesting. I was doing substitute teaching. I do that to make a little extra money, and I'm reading some educational material about in 1929 in Nigeria. There was a women's revolution. The British came in. You know how the British were always stomping all over the world in their day, and in Nigeria. In this particular town, the women actually, have a predominant role. They are the influencers. They are the decision makers. They are the ones that are respected and listened to. And of course, the British, the being all Western men, and actually most of the world kind of men, just wrote them off. Women, get out of here. Who are you? Where'd you come from? We only speak with men. Not that we really listen to the men that we are colonizing, but at least when we're not going to listen to somebody, we're not going to listen to men, and not you women. You don't get to be not listened to. So, at any rate, they had a revolution, and it was a peaceful kind of revolution, where they just kept sitting outside and chanting. And I think sometimes it got violent. Some of them got killed. but eventually they won their rights. And I just wanted to say, go women. I'm really happy that that happened there. I heard another story. Someone from Ghana who was saying how much the women are respected and praised there. And I just got to say, thank goodness there are some places to counter the horrible story of how men generally are towards women everywhere on the earth. All right, what's this? Is a story from Friendly Atheist, a Connecticut teacher. She had a cross sitting on her desk, or actually behind her desk on the wall. Wasn't a big cross, but it was a cross. It was there. And no one noticed it for the longest time until there was some issue that a student brought up about something totally unrelated. And the administration wanted to talk to her. They, went to her class and they noticed this. And they said, whoa, whoa. You can't have this. You got to get rid of it. She didn't want to get rid of it. I'm not getting rid of it. These are people that why can't you just say, okay, all right, I'll get rid of it? No, they want to fight to the death. And she was actually, she had emotional problems. So when they finally got her to try and take it off, her hands were shaking as she tried to remove it. She's quivering and shaking. And she did remove it, and she put it like under her desk somewhere. But then the next day, bing, it was back up there. And she says, I got to put it up there. My Lord spoke to me and told me I got to have it up there. Some people are just wacky inside. Now, I'm not saying just because you're religious, you're wacky, even though I do think there's an intellectual or emotional problem. If you believe in things that have no evidence for them, yeah, I think there's some issue with you with that. That doesn't mean it's like when you say someone is wrong, doesn't mean they're completely wrong. They're wrong with that issue. And so, at any rate, this woman, besides being just wrong, being religious, was also mentally unstable, where she couldn't take this cross down without shaking, shuddering, and going ready to go into some kind of a coma. So guess who's back? All right. Sometimes I like to talk about stuff besides politics, as I did with that weather story. And this one is a song. Guess who's back? I never heard this song. I believe it was by Eminem, but a '50s version came out. I'm watching TikToks and you got background music, and I heard this one, and it really sounded cool. If you like my kind of music, I mention music sometimes. And guess who's back? The '50s version. Don't know who does it, but if you look that up, got to be the only artist who did that. What else? Story about Moses. I was watching someone in an interview and saying, Moses didn't exist and blah blah other things. So, well, how do you know Moses didn't exist? And he says, well, it's from other elements that surround the story, like the discussion about, or just the mentioning of camels, Moses and the camels, because there were no camels at the time that Moses supposedly was there. Hundreds of years later, when the actual materials were written, camels had been introduced, but not back then. Another interesting thing about this conversation this woman was having, I only listened to a few minutes about it, was the dragon. What dragon? The dragon that God created and had to fight. Had to. Why he would have to fight? I mean, he's God. He created it. He could snap his fingers and uncreated it. But these stories. That's how these anything can happen in these stories. And you say, there's no dragon, no dragon. Well, yeah, there is somewhere, except it's kind of hidden. It's you can tell if you see certain quotes somewhere. I don't have them right now. I suppose if you look it up, you'll find it. But that further on in the Bible, past Genesis, there are other references to the struggle that God has with this dragon. It's like a huge, creature of chaos. So that never knew that. What's this? More Perfect Union. This was a website. This is the last thing, by the ways. And Wall Street. Wall Street is in the water business, in the water investing business. And I was watching interviews with these people in Texas, where their land is being purchased. The water rights are being purchased and bought and sold like investment opportunities by Wall Street investors. And so suddenly, you with the water you're getting from the ground to feed your livestock and grow your pecan trees, you might not have any rights to, or actually you got rights to it, except that the person across the street also has rights to it, and he's got rights to take billions of gallons of water a day from there. And suddenly your well just went empty because the water level dropped 100 feet. Um, Water. this is a crucial thing. This is another instance in which the country needs to think about, and the government needs to think about the country as a whole, instead of this let corporations just be businesses. Everything runs fine. You get the best success when we just let corporations run, individuals doing what individuals want to do. No, it does not work. We need some control. I guess the people in this country just don't have that attitude. China's doing so well. It's because they're thinking about, I want China to be well. Now that's now with Xi Jinping. I'm not saying there's all bad things about, you can't complain about anything. You get disappeared if you try to speak out. They got censorship all over the place, but at least they're trying to think, hey, I want our country to be cool. I want us to be the best. I want us to have all the snazzy everything, and I want us to really shine. Who knows? Maybe after him, there might be people who their only interest is filling their pockets with yen. Um, we'll see. I hope everything goes good with them. At any rate, there you go. There was a lot of things. I had to wait several days in order to get stuff because nothing's really been happening. I mean, there was the get rid of the troops. You can't have the troops in Ohio and Oregon, Chicago. You can't have the troops, but the troops are still there. I don't know when they're going to get out. Then you got the Epstein files. Slowly but surely, more information's coming out, little dribs and drabs. I'm sure Trump's in it up to his eyeballs as far as that stuff goes. So that's it. That's what's going on lately. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the oddball comments in there. And please like, subscribe, and hit the notify bell. I should have said that at the beginning. And hope you watch more episodes. Bye now.